So Russia has been in the news, obviously, for what's been happening in eastern Ukraine, and the elites don't seem to like that country very much. We can only speculate on the reasons why. I know I have my own personal speculations on that as well, but I want to take a few minutes and talk about my personal experiences while being in Russia. I have been to Russia 3 times actually, and I very much enjoyed that. But what got me interested in the first place is I was 5 years old. Let me think. Yeah, I was 5 years old when the Berlin Wall came down. And my mother was fixated on the television because it was a big deal at that time. And, I remember playing with toys. I actually remember this. I was in my living room. In the 1980s in the United States, you had two, typical family, middle class family had 2 television sets. We had the one big, tacky tube television, and then sometimes you had a little black and white television somewhere else. Um, so, I remember playing with some toys. I think they were Legos. And my mother, brought out a globe, and she said, because it's an old globe, it had, geographically had the Soviet Union as one political entity, with all the other countries in the world, and it separated East and West Germany. And my mother actually told me, this is what's happening, that the Soviet Union, principally Russia, doesn't have as much control over these other areas, and that in Eastern Europe, there used to be Russian influence all the way into Berlin and past Berlin a little bit, but now, they just broke the wall down, and now there's the 2 Germanys that people can come back and forth. So she was telling me about this, and of course, I'm 5 years old. I don't understand the significance of that. But it was interesting. It was interesting that some big major event happened that came from Russia. Of course, little did I know. I didn't understand, what a collapse of civilization meant, or the economic catastrophe that that they would have to suffer later on. But I remember seeing photographs and stuff of Russia itself, those Orthodox churches with the domes on them. I thought those were really cool. It looked like sort of Hershey kisses on the top of these buildings. And to me, that was fascinating. Plus, where I grew up in a part of the United States where it doesn't snow. And I was fascinated by cold weather and snow. And I thought, when I'm 5, 6, 7 years old, I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So, I told my mother, I want to go live in Russia because it snows all the time there. But to me, it was just fascinating. So something else to this story is we had a family friend that was an engineer, and he worked for a company that did business all over the world. Well, right after when the Soviet Union collapsed, this is in the early to mid 90s, they expanded into Russia. Because that Iron Curtain had came down and businesses started doing it. Famously, there's the McDonald's in Moscow. But there were a lot of other businesses that were coming in. And so he went over there as some kind of representative of the company. But anyway, and he told me about what that country was like. And so the country to me as a kid was so mysterious and so different. It was on the other side of the world. It was this big, great, powerful country that could destroy the United States. It was just geographically, on a globe, it was like this giant country, and as my child self, I related, well, it must be the most powerful country in the world since it's so big. And there are other stories I didn't expect to hear. He was telling me, about, how much poverty there was. Of course, like I said, this is the 1990s in Russia. And yeah, it was not an easy time. Some of the stories of things that he saw there. But I thought that is the most fascinating thing. This big, great, powerful country, but everybody's poor there, So I've always had an interest. Even when I was a kid, I had this interest in that country. And then fast forward again, when I went to, well, actually, I got interested in the sort of this pop psychology, this sort of pseudoscience called socionics, which was developed in Russia. And in 2004 was the internet back then. The big thing, the what everybody wanted to do back then was internet forums, discussion forums. There was no YouTube, there was no Facebook. MySpace wasn't really that popular at that time. This is like pre-MySpace internet, and you'd have discussion forums. Well, when I got into that, it would be like text and stuff, and it would take forever to load a video if there was a video. But there was a lot of people from Eastern Europe and Russia that were a part of this discussion. So again, it was very interesting. It was fascinating, something very different. But I communicated with that. So that interest stuck with me to when I got into college. We had foreign exchange students, some of which were from Russia again. So I just wanted to talk to them. And it absolutely fascinating. So I decided to, you know what, I'm going to just go over there. I've always wanted to go over there. And I maintained contact with some of the foreign exchange students. So I wanted to go. I asked them if I can go meet them over there, which I did. And I've heard a lot of other things about Russia, about how, you see those YouTube videos, all the crazy stuff that happens over there, and people are, you see these people driving crazy. You see the Gopniks in their Adidas attire, squatting, and you see, people, are just acting a bit different over there, and there's these rumors, the idea is that there was no feminism or anything like that. So you get to see a very different perspective in people, how people act. So I went over there. I tried to learn a little bit of the language, which I don't know very much of, but I knew some, enough to where I can listen. I can get bits and pieces of what people were saying. And so, yeah, I went over there. The first time I went there, I spent 2 weeks. And I decided I wanted to travel, so I went from Moscow to I went to what's that place? Voronezh. Then I went east to Samara, which is I think on the Volga River, and then I went back to Moscow. So I did kind of this triangle pattern, and I absolutely loved it. It's not. This great, the media paints it as some great enemy of humanity and everything else, and the people are terrible, but that's not the case at all. The people, if they're strangers, are very short with you. They don't want to talk to strangers. In the United States, people will talk to strangers, but people aren't like that over there. But when you actually get to know people over there, the people are amazing. They're very, very cool to chat with, and of course, like I said, I didn't know very much Russian, but, I chat like a little in Russian, and if they knew a little bit of English, whatever, but, I really had a good time over there. I really enjoyed it. I actually went back a couple of times to go over there. And it's just, I didn't care. It was almost a spiritual experience where, I actually fasted for like 4 days while I was over there. Just because, when you travel, you're taken away from somewhere that you can, you get so much, I guess, adrenaline that you can sort of push yourself more. So, it was a good experience. It's a more authoritarian country. You can't record and take photos and video of anywhere. There's a lot of places you can't just do that. You can't do it in public buildings. You can actually get in a lot of trouble for that. But overall, it wasn't like, like Nazi Germany or Stalinist Russia or anything like that. The mood was, in some sense, I almost felt that I was more free there than I would be here in the United States. When I got back in the United States, all 3 times, I actually felt pretty lonely, just because people are more candid. They're more real. In the United States, people are more fake. They pretend to be nice to you when they're not, and it's just there's certain elements or certain aspects of the way people are over there that I think are superior than the way people are over here. I did not think that Russia was, terrible. I mean, yes, there are obviously problems wrong with it. I mean, people's loyalties are very personal, compared to Western countries. So you do have more corruption. There is that problem, and you know, obviously there's a lack of wealth. Partly because there's a brain drain. A lot of smart people left because they don't have the economic freedom. So if you want to start a business, it's pretty hard to do there if you could do it at all. I mean, there's definitely not the same kind of opportunities that you would have here in the United States that you could over there. People don't have disposable income over there like they do over here. So it's harder to make money over there unless you happen to be like an engineer or like a doctor. Even doctors don't make that much money. Or if you happen to be connected over there. But it really is not a bad country. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of aspects that I really appreciated over there. And that's part of the reason why I have certain speculations on why the elites and people on the left, the people on the left are just useful idiots anyway, but the elitists hate that place so much because it's a breakaway elite. Like the Russian oligarchy itself is an elite that don't see eye to eye with the West for geopolitical and economic reasons, but also that culture. The people over there, they don't push the crap that they push over here in the West over there, and I think the elites are kind of pissed about that. And I think that's probably the real reason why they're trying to take Russia down. I don't think it's because Russia is this great enemy. But anyway, so that's my experience in Russia. There's a lot of other things I could talk about as well. There's a lot of stories I could talk about over there as well. But that's just a general overview. I would definitely recommend on learning some Russian before you go there. It's pretty much just common sense. Don't expect to just be able to talk to strangers over there because people don't like to talk to you if they don't know who the hell you are. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I would definitely, if I were to go back there, I'd watch myself for sure. There was one incident that somebody did try to steal my stuff, and I had to kick him off of me. But other than that, I had a couple of other incidences. I had one lady because she knew I was American, because I guess I come off that way, and she basically cursed me out of her shop. I went go looking around. She basically told me to get the heck out of there. But other than that, everybody else was really cool. Like I said, Russia is not some bad country. I mean, it really is. It's really a nice country.